Leaving Neverland is also shedding light on why people who say they are child sex abuse survivors may not come forward. And it's prompting many parents to discuss how they can protect their own children. In the film, Wade Robson explains why he waited more than 2 decades to accuse Michael Jackson of abuse. Jackson has always denied similar allegations. It is estimated that 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 53 boys are sexually abused or assaulted by an adult. Dr. Veronique Valliere is a clinical psychologist with more than 25 years' experience working with offenders and survivors of child sexual abuse. She has also trained prosecutors and law enforcement on how to interview the victims. And she joins us at the table. Really good to have you, Doctor. I should say, I had you on speed dial last weekend because I had a lot of questions about what is a proper way to interview the victims, and I thank you. You were very, very helpful to me.
I appreciate that.
One of the things that you pointed out was that Wade and James and most sexual abusers, or many of them, take some time to come forward. And they will lie on the stand, as these boys admitted that they did when they were younger, and they will lie to their parents, even after the parents ask them repeatedly. Right. You were not surprised to hear that?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, when you think about it, no is the easiest lie to tell, first of all. But second of all, the layers of choice to protect are very deep with victims. There's a self-protection of shame and blame. They may feel responsible or culpable for the abuse, especially if the offender grooms them with saying, you know, this is our secret, we'll go to jail.
You said it's harder for boys in particular, too.
Right.
Why?
Well, especially back when Michael Jackson was being accused, homosexuality was more shameful. And so there's things that go with boys, including they're not socialized to talk about vulnerability, or they have a greater sexual response. A lot of their sexual abuse doesn't hurt and produces a sexual response in the child, which can be very confusing.
I'm reminded of the Larry Nassar scandal, too, essentially when this doctor was abusing these children, too. Some of them were doctors themselves, the parents. And the question is, how do parents not know? And how do parents look for the warning signs that their children are being abused, even by someone powerful that they respect?
Well, that used to be a question for me, a struggle for me when I first started this work with offenders. But when I finally understood how deeply skilled they are at exploiting and weaponizing things that we consider human, like care and trust and hope and niceness, they exploit all the things that we consider make us good people, right?
You say be aware of the power of nice.
Right.
What do you mean?
No.
What do you mean?
Nice is an extremely powerful weapon. It's very controlling. If you don't reciprocate in niceness, it makes you the problem if you're not nice back. And it also, we attribute a lot of character traits and things like kindness and honesty and truthfulness to niceness, when nice is a very superficial behavior.
Michael Jackson was such an idiosyncratic character, but as Norah points out, in the U.S. gymnastics situation, you also have it in the Catholic Church. So how do parents not just recognize, but go, talk to their children to keep this from happening in the first place?
Well, first of all, pay attention if someone's paying too much attention to your child. Don't be starstruck by that kind of attention, and don't let somebody isolate your child. Look for presents that aren't explained, or reluctance with your child to communicate with you, or a change of attachment. But most of all, understand that parents can be groomed just as well. I mean, they can be manipulated, they can be tricked. And if your gut is telling you something's off, don't talk yourself out of that. As well as, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We need to educate kids about what's healthy in terms of sexuality and when to say yes, and give them agency over their body, and not treat sex like a dark secret, because that pervades their ability to come talk about it to us.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that, because one of the things we heard from both of those accusers was they just didn't know anything. They didn't understand what was happening with their bodies, so they didn't know that that was wrong. When should parents start talking to their children about their bodies and about some feelings that they might start having? What is considered a good age?
Well, I think children on up need to learn the right words for their body parts, so when they tell, no one's confused. They need to not be forced to hug people. They need to learn how to respect sexuality and intimacy and the choices and the difference between privacy and secrecy. We also have to rid ourselves of this narrative we have about sexual abuse, that it's violent and frightening and easily identifiable, because even adult victims of sexual assault often do not know they were sexually assaulted because it doesn't meet their narrative of what rape or assault is.
And they keep going back to their abuser, too. That was another thing. Why? How do you explain that?
Well, they form an attachment, a true attachment of love, and we forget that the abuse is only a component of the overall relationship. So the offender may provide them other things like feeling special, feeling loved, giving them gifts, all the things that would require a loss of the individual if they tell.
These are such helpful tips and discussions, and we should also note too that I think pediatricians are required, starting at a certain age, to have this discussion alone with the child, to ask them if they are being touched inappropriately by people. That is
It's important
required.
to ask, but it's also important to recognize the barriers to disclosure, even in the best situations.
Even with a doctor that they trust. Good point.
Right.
Dr. Veronique Valliere, thank you.
Thank you.
The National Sexual Assault Hotline is available 24/7 for anyone who needs it, and that number is 1-800-656-4673.